What's up, guys? It's Brian here with Ride Your Money Wave. So, I had to take a little bit of time off to take care of some rental property issues as well as photograph a few weddings. The economy's starting to open back up, which means I am starting to get back to work, which feels incredible. But at the same time, I want to keep this YouTube channel and this podcast going. And one of the things that I want to do is also hear from other people's financial journeys and opinions, as well as you. So I had the opportunity to bring on Andy Hill from Marriage, Kids, and Money. Now, I serendipitously bumped into Andy at a financial independence, a documentary called Playing with Fire, and didn't know who he was, but struck up a conversation. And as it turned out, he walked up and sat on a panel of experts and told his money story. I said, holy crap, look at this guy. This is incredible. And he lives locally to me right here in Metro Detroit, Michigan. So I had him on the show, and for the first time ever, I recorded on Zoom as well as on this guy here and edited it all together. I hope you enjoy. So something a little bit different, not simply me talking to you, but rather you get to join in and listen to a conversation that I had with Andy. I hope you enjoy. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you like the new format and if you want to have on more guests on the show. So yeah, till next time, take care. Go out there and live your best life. All right, guys, we are sitting down with Andy Hill from Marriage, Kids, and Money. Short story, I bumped into Andy Hill not even knowing who he was when I went to go see a indie film called Playing with Fire, which is all about the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. And here was just this, happy, outgoing, extroverted guy. And I'm like, man, this guy lights up the room. And it turns out he's like a celebrity in the finance world. And even better, he lives like down the road from me. And what are the chances of all this happening? So, Andy, I told you even before we hit the record button that I feel like a kid in a candy store, like a giddy little schoolgirl, because, I get to interview someone that I really look up to and the career path that you've really carved for yourself. It's remarkable, leaving your 9-to-5, diving into the world of FIRE and personal finance and helping other people, educating people on financial literacy. And I know that you're going to leave our listeners with some golden nuggets of financial truth. So, Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I love that introduction, and I feel honored to be here and excited to talk about these topics that you are curating on your podcast.
Thanks. So let's start off, because one thing that I really like about you is your transparency. And yesterday on Facebook, you posted your 3 biggest financial mistakes. And I don't think anyone likes owning their own mistakes, right? I think we all try to like forget and hide those photos of us in grade school and like our haircuts in high school, right? And you posted your 3 financial mistakes, and thinking about where you were mentally in your journey with money then compared to where you are today, it's quite an amazing financial transformation. So your 3 mistakes were: you bought a home that was too expensive, you had blind faith in a financial advisor, which I think a lot of people do. They see the word expert or they see letters after someone's name and they get impressed by mahogany desks and, big commercial buildings on Woodward. But the third one, the engagement ring on a student loan, that one hurt a little bit.
Yeah, that was a reality. I'm happy to dive into it a little bit if you'd like.
we can in a sec. And now we're sitting here, and you just announced that you and your wife are approaching. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're approaching the $1 million mark in net worth, right?
That's right. Yeah, about a couple months ago, through the market's ups and downs, we crossed over the double comma mark, and we're excited about that because we've come a long way over the past 10 years of our relationship.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So take us back to the beginning. I think we all have a small pain in our heart when we hear that you're buying an engagement ring on a student loan. So you go from that to being a millionaire in your 30s. What caused that transformation, and how did you learn this information?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess taking it back, I met this girl that I was really, really in love with. And she lived in California and I lived in Michigan. And I would do anything to scrape together the money to get out there to see her on some red eye Spirit Airlines from from Detroit
You're
to
holding
Los
your knees
Angeles and
and
do
your
like
luggage.
yeah, they'd make you essentially pay to use the bathroom, all the
Right.
extras, right? But I mean, the tickets were like $200, so it worked well for my budget at the time. I was probably making, I don't know, maybe $40,000, and we were in the middle of the Great Recession at that time too. But I was in love, and nothing was stopping me from going out there and seeing her. And lo and behold, she was from Michigan, so I worked my charms and eventually got her to move back home. But at that time, I still didn't have a lot of money in order to, I was so in love with her, I wanted to be married to her. So I'm like, what can I do to make this happen as soon as possible? I think I had maybe a couple $100 in my savings account that I had been saving to buy this ring. And I wanted to get her a good one that she would love and have for a while. And, and I found that, okay, well, this is going to take me a couple of years to make it happen, but I really want her to be my wife. So I'm like, okay, well, I've been borrowing from my student loans for, traveling, going to concerts, going to bars, things like that, because, hey, it's just money that's sitting there. You can just borrow it and use it for whatever you want, even at 7%. So I said, well, why don't I just borrow a little bit more to buy the engagement ring? So that's what I did. I borrowed from my student loans. I think I was also borrowing from my home equity line of credit at the same time, the, the amount that I had from the equity of my home, because it was available and it was there, and it was, I just didn't want to slow down, and I didn't really have a lot of patience. So yeah, I bought my wife's engagement ring with my student loans, paid 7% on the interest of that ring that she's still wearing today. And I don't even think I told her about it, how I purchased it, until we were married. So yeah, I would say that would probably be one of my early money mistakes for sure.
It's funny because it starts off as a painful mistake, but then when you have a happy marriage, you're like, that was actually maybe a really great investment, even at 7%.
Honestly, yeah. You know what? As it's coming out of my mouth, yes, it was a mistake. It was not a smart money move to make, but man, was it a good investment.
Sure. How many years you guys been married?
We have been married 10 years in just this past May. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Just past the 10-year mark.
Congrats. And so
thank you.
When you guys, because who you pick as a partner is huge on your financial journey. You're either going to be a team and a supportive cheerleader, or you might be at opposite ends of the financial spectrum and it's going to be an uphill battle. So, did you guys do this journey together? Did she pull you more onto the financial bandwagon? How did that work?
Well, it's a great question. In the beginning, we got together and both of us weren't really concerned too much about money. We were very happy to live for today and have some great memories with each other, do some fun things, travel, because we had combined our income when we got married, and all of a sudden, we were making over $100,000, and it was like, wow, this is awesome. We have a lot more to spend, and we started doing that. We spent more and had more fun, and then right around the time that we were talking about having kids, and when we found out we were expecting our daughter Zoe, something clicked in my brain. It was like, boom, I need to make sure my daughter has like the best life possible. And how can I do that? And something that was nagging on me for a while was our financial situation. We weren't in a horrible way, but at the time where we started to say, hey, let's get things in order, I had about $30,000 of student loans. About $5,000 of that was from the ring. And she had a $20,000 car loan. So we had about $50,000 of debt. I started watching Susie Orman, DVRing it at my house, and she was always talking about the term net worth, and I'm like, net worth, what's that? Figuring it out, and so Nicole and I like wrote it on the board. We said, well, surely since we're making over six figures, our net worth must be huge. So we started writing things down. On the left side, we had assets, and on the right side, we had liabilities. So we started writing down our assets. We started writing down my home value, which at the time was a lot less than what I actually owed on the home because we had this nasty market going on in Detroit around that time. And then on the liability side, we had my big mortgage. We had the car loan. We had the student loans. And lo and behold, we weren't rich. We had a negative $50,000 net worth. So it was an epiphany moment for us. It's like, doesn't really matter how much you make. It matters how much you keep, you invest, and you build for the future. So at that point, we had those epiphanies. Okay, $50,000 of debt. We're at negative $50,000 on our net worth. What can we do to move this thing forward and give our kids a great life? So we started to talk about, well, I know a great place to start is education. So I don't even know where to start. So I kept watching Susie Orman because she was funny and that show was quick, and I think it was on CNBC or something like that. And then I picked up the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, which was a really great book that kind of put things in easy steps for us to move things forward. King of Debt Free for sure. And it just sort of motivated you to understand, like, hey, when you have less debt, you have less stress, less obligations, and more options. And that became sort of our way forward. After that, picking up other books and things like that. So our first mission was to get rid of the debt. And that is the first thing that we did together. And we did that by sitting down once a month, looking over the numbers and saying, okay, what can we do to get debt free? And for me, it was all about the numbers. I said, okay, debt free is the goal. But for her, it was like, that doesn't mean anything for me. But when we started to talk about it and realize our goals for the future, I realized that she was more interested in, going part-time and eventually full-time to be a stay-at-home mom as her goal, while mine was being debt-free. So as soon as I changed my language a little bit to her and talked about the emotional side of what money can do for you, that is when we sort of had a breakthrough together, because we didn't always speak the same money language. But when I would put myself in her shoes and empathize and see, okay, this is what her goals are, how can we both get what we want and head forward? That's when we would win together.
It's interesting. I give my clients, when they book with me, I normally give them the book, The 5 Love Languages, because, some people it's acts of kindness, others are words of affirmation. And I've never really heard someone talking about like a mutual money language within a relationship. And I think you need to go trademark that book real quick. I think that could be your second claim to fame.
I think that would be a great one. I think that might have been produced already. I have to remember the author's name, Tara Jackson. She took the elements of that 5 love languages and brought it into the money world, and it's a great book.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. So you get on board, you have this mutual goal, you want to get debt free, you have a 15-year mortgage, which that already is aggressive and impressive. And then you pay that off somewhere between 4 and 5 years.
Yeah. So that was another coming together in our relationship. Nicole, when she moved in with me, she lived in my bachelor pad in Royal Oak, the Metro Detroit area. So I had this 1,100 square foot bungalow. I thought it was fantastic. But when she moved in, she goes, okay, let's spruce this up here, spruce that up there. And there was only so much sprucing we could do after a couple of years where she's like, all right, we got to get our own family home.
Every guy is nodding his head like, yep. Exactly. Take the St. Pauli girl neon sign down.
Yeah, right.
The Michael Scott plasma
my
TV.
Empty beer bottles with sand in them weren't good enough for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started looking at, or she started looking at homes, and found a great neighborhood. And for me, when we were looking at that, I had been through so much with the mortgage and the downturn in the economy that I just felt like I do not want to get another big mortgage where I feel strapped by the amount of payments that I have to make. each month. And I feel like I have to continue to perform at a job that I'm really not that passionate about. So our agreement together was, okay, let's get this house, but let's pay it off in 5 years. So that was sort of our agreement. That way she could have the home of her dreams and I could have the mortgage-free, debt-free life that would allow me to relax a little bit at work and just feel less pressure. So that's the handshake agreement we had, and we did it together in just under 4 years through making aggressive payments each month on top of what we had, and then finding other ways to make more money through selling stuff around our house, reducing our expenses at home, starting side hustles, and just getting to a point where we became not only debt free but mortgage free at 35 years old.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think the hardest part that a lot of people struggle with is, they can probably wrap their brain around the end goal, or they can, kind of live vicariously or visualize like what it would feel like to be debt free, or, to not have these obligations. But it seems like it's such an insurmountable mountain. And what's really hard is to change your habits, redefine what's normal, and then build that momentum of side hustles and selling and changing your mentality where you're like, oh, but that's my favorite, trinket. I got that when I was, into like, let that stuff go. So how did you kind of build that momentum? Because to do it in, I think you said under 4 years, I mean, that sounds like a sprint, where you just didn't even stop. So that is, it's an incredible accomplishment, but how did you kind of build that momentum and change your mentality around it?
Sure. I think it was a few things up front, outside of just hard work and working with my wife, was we had a really good income combined to help us to hit that goal. Over the 10-year period that we were married and on this journey, we had an average income of $190,000. So that's a big shovel to,
Sure.
combat a problem. We'll call that the mortgage a problem. And then secondly, I had the opportunity to work side by side with her and find ways that it could work for both of us. Because when you do something aggressive like that, you can get a little bit overexcited, and that can cause problems for your marriage. So we had the ability to get together every month and make sure we were on the same page and still allow room for fun or the things that brought her joy too. I was so dead set on the goal that I was happy to deprive my life and live in a cardboard box, but she helped to remind me that, hey, we've got 2 young kids now. Let's make some memories with them. Let's do some important things. Yes, hit some big goals, but also enjoy life today. So I had a fantastic partner that helped me to move things along. And then, a really good income to do it. But as far as keeping motivated along the way, we would try to set like mini goals along the way to create some celebratory moments. So when we got under $100,000 in our mortgage principal, we went out to dinner and we, a great evening together and sort of celebrated the moment. As we got to that moment of paying off the mortgage, we celebrated with the kids. We created a mortgage piñata. My wife came up with the idea of taking all of the mortgage papers and creating a paper mache piñata out of it, filling it with candy and coins, and letting the kids like hit it like it was a holiday. And then we would take some of the papers and tape them together and let the kids run through them like it was like a high school football game. We just made some fun moments with it. That way we could remember these big moments in our lives, and then hopefully our kids will remember them too, and then create a mortgage-free life for themselves as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Gamifying money.
That's right.
Really
that's right.
helps.
It's got to be fun.
Oh my God. Yeah, it really helps it. I remember hitting specific numbers in my retirement accounts and going, all right, if I can get to this, we're going to go out to eat. If I can get to this, I'm going to do this, and just the other day, I teach high school and I have this photography business, and normally that means I only get Sundays off. And a lot of times that means I'm also shooting someone's engagement session that I can't say no to. And so it's difficult to find time to relax. And I was like, my happy place is on the water. And I know boats are just a total liability. It's like, it just, they just burn money. But I'm like, you know what? I think if I can hit 1 million in my retirement accounts, then I will not feel guilty about buying a boat. It's like, and I was looking at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll probably be right around 40 years old when that happens, and that'll be a nice gift to myself that I won't feel guilty about it because it'll be crossing a finish line. So I'm with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that was part of the reason that I had some failures probably in the first 5 years of my after college life is that I didn't have the patience. I didn't have the will to want to wait. I just wanted it all right away. I grew up and, my parents had a nice house and, we lived in a nice community. So I thought, well, I graduated. I should have a nice house and a nice community right away. It's like, no, dude, you make $28,000. You just graduated from college. You don't need to buy a house. You don't need a fancy car. But a lot of those things were just, hey, well, I think I need it. So I didn't have the patience that you're talking about right now, where you set a goal in the future saying, hey, I'm going to treat myself when I do this amazing thing. So kudos to you for that, because it's hard to have that patience. But when you get there and you do it, that boat is going to be that much sweeter.
Yeah. And then I think the big thing is that I won't feel bad because when you're responsible with your money first, when you always make good decisions with your money first, it's like the enjoyment of that goal is just a little bit sweeter. I mean, could I go buy the boat today? Sure. But I would always go, oh man, I could have invested that in my brokerage, or I could have thrown that at the mortgage or whatever. But no, like once you hit that goal, it's like, you know what? I'm doing all right. I kind of, I don't like to use the word deserve, but for all financial models, this isn't going to make a difference. So we're okay.
Exactly. It's important to have those wins and those goals. And that's something that over time I had to learn too, because I was so dead set on some of these big financial goals that I would get, solely focused on it. And even after passing it and celebrating, I would be like, all right, what's the next big goal? But
yeah.
Right, it can be addicting, but maybe there's a way to find some middle ground of still hitting important big goals for your future, but also letting you enjoy life today. And that's sort of the mission that I'm trying to be on right now.
That's interesting. Because I feel like I'm in that same boat where like you start hitting these goals and it's like, all right, I want to max out my Roth IRA. I want to max out my 401k. That alone over a career is going to make you a multimillionaire. And then it's Absolutely. Like, I'm very fortunate through teaching, we get a 457 as well. So I'm like, oh, let me max that out. And then it's like, oh, and then I open up an account through my business, and dude, it becomes this game of maxing everything out. And then you're like, okay, well, wait a second, let's pull it back a little bit. Let's live a little today. Let's find that balance. And so I'm probably a few steps behind you in the sense where it's like, all right, let's use money as a tool and apply it to our lives today to create purpose and allow us to live a balanced, more healthier life. And so what I'm really interested in with you is like, how did you decide to pay off the house versus invest? Because one of them's mathematical, one of them's emotional, and at the finish line, we're both going to have commas in our bank accounts. And so it's like, it's two different paths that kind of lead to the same end result. What did it for you? Was it your wife's want to be a part-time or then go full-time mom?
Yeah, that was part of it. Another portion of it is that I really was not satisfied with my work career. I had chosen a career out of college just out of, I could try that. And then 15 years later, I look back and I'm like, I really don't even enjoy what I'm doing. Have I been good at it, and have I been able to be helpful? Yeah, and that made me feel satisfied. But what do I really want to do? What do I want to do that's very helpful, that makes me feel good? So that was sort of a big reason for us to be so aggressive in paying off the mortgage and moving things forward like we did. And through that discovery, I had some personal analyzation on what I actually want to be doing in my life. And those moments of reflection were actually really good for my future planning. Absolutely.
I got to imagine that people probably thought you were crazy. You're like, dude, you got plenty of time. You don't have to pay this off in 4 years, 5 years. But what's interesting is now with this pandemic, with people losing their jobs and, the government even saying, hey, you can suspend your mortgage payments and stuff. Everyone thinks you're crazy when you say, look, you should really have a year's worth of emergency funds saved up. And it's like, oh, that's too much. It's 3 to 6 months. But when poop hits the fan, there's guys like you and you're like, hey, they can't take my house away from me. I mean, that's like,
it feels really good to not have a mortgage right now during all this stuff that's going on. And, to your point on investing versus paying off the mortgage, I think that if you look at the numbers during the time frame that I paid off the mortgage versus investing a lot more, we could have made a lot more money for sure. But the fact that we don't have a mortgage today, that it just feels so good. It feels really like we have a lot less on our shoulders. It's allowed us to make some personal choices that are great for our family that we wouldn't have been able to make if we were still paying a $2,000 mortgage each month.
Sure. During that time, were you also investing in like your 401k match or anything like that?
Yeah. So when you hear that debate of pay off the mortgage versus invest, there's always a middle ground of why not both, right? So yes, my company had a really great matching program. So they matched up to 15% of whatever you put in. So if I maxed it out, they would give me 15% of that in free money. So I did that ever since I started my job in 2013, my latest job in 2013 up until I left the company in 2020. So that time frame of maxing it out, receiving the match, helped me to get almost $200,000 balance in my 401k during, I think it was like a 6 or 7 year time frame. So
nice.
Just compounding on top of each other during a great bull run of 2013 to 2020 helped us to have some great retirement savings. We were also doing the Roth IRA as well for a period of time. I think we maxed that out for maybe 3 years between the two of us. We started an HSA a few years ago because we had high deductible healthcare programs. So between all of those things, I think we've built up and with my company, I was able to receive, it's called an ESOP. So it's an employee stock ownership plan. So the time that I was there, I was able to receive essentially another $100,000 of free money, which is fantastic. The company had great benefits. I just wasn't in love with what I was doing. So now we have somewhere around the, $500,000 in retirement savings. And we're getting to that point as you're talking about, building up your retirement savings, where we say, well, how much is enough? How much is enough where if we maybe just contribute a little bit more, that the compound growth is going to do something amazing over the next 20, 25 years, where it's going to be a couple $1 million or $3 million. And isn't that plenty to live on in our 60s? So we're getting to that point where we're definitely not making as much money today based on some career choices we've made, but I don't feel like we need to maybe throw the max in there as much anymore or blow it up as much. And it would be great to have 5 million, 10 million in our retirement, but how much is enough, and how much can we decide to maybe enjoy a little bit more today and make some decisions that are better for our family as opposed to having, millions in retirement.
Well, I think it's really important to understand that you only get one opportunity to front load your savings because, the way
30s, man.
the way compound interest works. I mean, you can't start in your 40s and 50s unless you plan on living to 110. So
right. Exactly.
it's a, I think people in your 20s and 30s, people will look at you thinking that you're, like really either capitalist or aggressive or whatever when you're just trying to put every penny in. But it's like, wait a second, that means that I can coast a lot earlier. I can quit a lot earlier. I'm just willing to front load my work. And I look at it in terms of sacrifice, where it's like, if I do this in my 20s, it only affects me. And I'm like you, where it's like I could live in a cardboard box and I would have been fine. And so it only affects me, but later on in life, I can take care of my wife, my grandkids. I can contribute, endlessly the interest to, causes that I believe in. I mean, the impact at the end is so much greater than the sacrifice in the beginning. And so, yeah, I think you really played your cards right there.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so spot on that starting early helps a lot. And because of that, I started to have a lot of conversations with my kids about investing too. So even though they might not understand exactly what compound interest is, I know that over time it can make a huge difference. So we're already starting to invest their chore money at 8 and 6 years old, so that just becomes an ingrained habit of theirs. So that when they are 18 or 20, they probably have a decent balance already, and it'll continue to grow up until their retirement age, and they can make a huge difference in their future as well.
And their 25-year-old self is going to thank you so much. When I give to my nieces and nephews, it sounds like I'm a curmudgeon, like I'm Scrooge. But I actually have never given them a gift. And instead, I always give my brother money to invest. And it's like, look, they do not need another Moana doll. They do not need another piece of plastic that they're going to step on and break. And instead, I'd love to sit down when they get old enough and say, hey, your Uncle Brian really believes in, financial education or college or whatever. And so, we never really gave you a gift, but here's why. And then, explain to him the stock market. And I did that with my cousin when he was 15. He came over and spent the night, and we walked through Ann Arbor, and we ended up at Cafe Felix having like coffee, and we just spoke for like 3 hours. He was just curious about like money. I don't know what turned him on, and dude, that was it. That was the beginning. And now he's 25 years old, I think, and just already well into his financial journey. I'm so proud of him,
That's awesome. Yeah, if you start early, it can be amazing. And compound interest is truly magic, man.
Yeah. So let me do some rapid fire questions here. I know you have a whole podcast to run and a empire to build, but so do you use a financial advisor? Because I remember your one of your regrets was blind faith. So
yeah. I connected with somebody in maybe around 2011 when we were starting to really pay attention to our money, and it didn't work out. There was the advice that was given was more aimed at selling products than it was helping us to get where we want to go. So that is not all financial advisors at all.
Mm-hmm.
I have had the pleasure of speaking with dozens of them on my podcast that I really appreciate their philosophy. And so that's not to say that financial advisors are bad, but like any profession, there are ones that are out for your best interest, and there are ones that aren't. And unfortunately, we had one of the opposites. So I don't have one right now. From that spot in my life, I became very, very interested in learning more about money. So that was the positive that came out of the negative, that I said, well, I don't want to ever be in this position where I don't understand what somebody's saying to me and help me to invest in XYZ. So I started reading a lot of books. I started reading a lot of blogs, listening to a lot of podcasts, so that I would never be in that position again where I felt like, man, I feel like I got swindled a little bit. So I don't currently work with somebody right now. I see the value in it, and I probably will in the future.
There's like 3 camps of people, right? There's the people that don't even think about money, don't plan. Good luck and God bless. There's the people that get the financial advisor and either, put blind faith or are somewhat educated and work with them. And then there's the ones that say, hey, it's my money. I worked really hard for it. I care about it. I show it respect. And I'm just, eternally curious about how this works, and they go kind of educate themselves and become their own financial advisor. And I think you can get 90% probably of all the financial planning advice that you need out of like 2 or 3 books. And it isn't really until it gets complicated, like really complicated, and you either start having wills and trusts and LLCs and, tax codes are changing. Then you're like, okay, hold on. I got to start building a team here. But for most people, especially if you don't have a side hustle, I think for most people, you can be your own financial advisor with just a few choice books. And it sounds like we're both kind of in that same ballpark. So the next question is, what financial books would you recommend that people read? Is there anyone that really changed your life that you just go back to every time?
Well, I would say that I really enjoyed The Total Money Makeover. It's a great starting place for a lot of people with their money. If you want to learn to get out of debt and create some financial mindset that helps you to win with money, I think that's a fantastic book. I had the pleasure to meet Dave Ramsey last year and shake his hand. It was really cool because he's done a lot for our family, and I was happy to thank him in person. And I would say The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins is a fantastic book that helps you to understand the simplicity of index funds and how they are very powerful, simple, and low cost and effective. That helped me with my investing journey. Another book that was within that realm was Scott Allen Turner's 99-Minute Millionaire. It's like a short read, but very focused on how you can invest to become a millionaire based on taking advantage of the situation that you're in. And then the last one I would say is the Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. It's less of a financial book, but it's more about how little, small daily actions can compound to make incredible results for your life. And that he talks about it in a health fashion, a money fashion, career fashion. And I really like that concept just for everyday life because it doesn't need to be overly complicated. I think sometimes when there's so much jargon or complex things that you see on the news about how people make money, that's where I think that can be toxic and dangerous. I think it can be simple as long as you allow it to be simple, and then that book helps to demonstrate that.
I think that keep it simple, stupid mentality works with a lot of stuff, especially investing. It's like, listen, you don't need complicated annuities, index or mutual funds, and it's like, hold on, index funds, asset allocation, it'll get you there. You won't impress anyone at a cocktail party. You're not
super boring.
Yeah.
If you want to be talking about something that, like, if you want to talk about hot stocks and which ones you're buying and selling, this is not going to work for you. But this is the super boring way to become a millionaire for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting that last book that you mentioned, there was another book called The Compound Effect, and I think it's by Warren Hardy. If I got it right behind me, actually, Darren Hardy, and same exact thing. So you'd probably enjoy that book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Compound Effect. Thank you. Yeah, I'll look into that one.
What's the best piece of either life or financial advice that you either heard or you would like to pass on to your kids or your listeners?
Oh, that's a good one. My mom always said, like the quote, carpe diem. And it's just something that stuck with me because I think we can talk a lot in our lives and maybe philosophize about the things that we should do, but it's really all about action. So when we take action, we can really, create the change that we want in our lives. And carpe diem means seize the day. So I close each one of my shows with that statement, because I think we can talk for a half hour, we could talk for 45 minutes about all the stuff that we should do, but it's really all about getting it done. Really all about taking action and learning from it too. So if you've taken the action and it didn't go the direction you wanted to, at least now. We started at the top of the show about all the things that I did wrong. At least I learned from those things. At least all those things I said, okay, I never want to be strapped in a house that I can't afford or that's holding me down. I need to have patience to buy the things that I can't afford today with regard to my wife's ring. And then I learned that it's important to be able to, know what you need to know about your money so that you don't feel swindled by somebody in any area of your life. So I learned from all those things, and I learned by taking action.
Cool. I think it's really important too that to even go a step back from that action, and action is the result, but then to also be made aware of the thought process and the emotions before that reaction. And you
absolutely
acknowledge that when you said, I learned from the actions that I did wrong. You had emotional responses going, I never want to feel like this again. And when people don't acknowledge or recognize the thought process, which leads to the emotions which lead to the actions, they're going to just keep making those same, there's a disconnect. They're going to go, oh my God, this credit card debt sucks, and then they don't like actually change their thought process behind credit cards, their thought process behind money. And then they just keep, every 30 days racking it up. It's like, oh boy. So I think there's like a trifecta where you have to have those three things, acknowledge your thoughts. How do those thoughts affect your emotions? And those emotions normally turn into an action, and it can either be destructive or it can be like this self-fulfilling aspect of positivity. When you get that ball rolling, you start paying down the debt, you start building your net worth, and then it's like, oh, okay. And now it's so ingrained in you, you can't ever imagine going back to that old way of life.
Because it's worked too. I mean, that's the thing. Once it's proven and you're like, okay, this is actually working, it's hard to go back to the way it used to be.
Sure. So Andy, where can people find your podcast? Where can they find information about you? You do more than just speak about this stuff. You also offer kind of like private educational lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, if you're into podcasts, you can type in Marriage, Kids, and Money in your favorite podcast player. If you're into reading instead, we got a great blog at marriagekidsandmoney.com. And yeah, if anybody who's ever interested in coaching one-on-one, there's a tab on that website called Work With Me. And you can click there and have a free 15-minute consultation with me and see if it's a partnership that would be helpful for you.
Cool. Well, Andy, I got to say, from the day one when I met you, I thought this guy is cool. And then I've been listening to your podcast. I always enjoy, your voice in my earbuds as I'm cleaning the house and stuff. And when I saw you had like JL Collins on, I was like, oh, this guy's living the life. How cool is that? I mean, it's really neat to see you have the courage to really take, your future, your destiny, your career into your own hands, and even more so to do it in the sense that you're helping people, right? And
I really appreciate that, man. It's a fun journey, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and I'm glad to see that we're both on the same journey of helping people.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will end it there. And so you heard him, Andy Hill, Marriage, Kids, and Money, Spotify, iTunes, type it in, and he's willing to hop on a call with you for 15 minutes and possibly even do some individual coaching with you. Andy, thank you so much for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll do it again, and we can have a goal that we both mutually celebrate. Maybe bring you out on the boat in a few years.
I love that goal, man. That's what we do in Michigan. We go on boats here.
That's right.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
My pleasure. Take care.